Everything, everything gonna be all right this morning.
And here we go. What's up, everybody? Another episode for the archives. Getting the band back together real quick as I'm talking to my boy here, my brother from another mother. You know who he is. He is Mr. Pat Miletich. Patrick, what's up, man?
Oh, all kinds of stuff's up, buddy. Just staying busy.
Yeah.
You know how that goes.
Well, and it's beautiful because you literally were the very first guest on this show. When I told people, you could echo those sentiments when you said you wanted to be a fighter. But I mean, when I said I'm going to start a podcast, whatever it was 7 years ago, it's like, oh, you think you're going to be Joe Rogan? Like, no, I'm going to be Jeff Wilson. Who are you going to get on? Like, I'm going to get Pat Miletich. There's no fucking way Pat Miletich is going to come out here. And you were so gracious with your time, bro. You were on multiple times, and obviously after one of the episodes, you hit me up and asked to do the conspiracy farm. We're going to talk all about it, but yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of the elephant in the room. I mean, we'll get into kind of what you've been up to, but not necessarily the elephant in the room, but I just got so many questions, and I actually did one of my first ever solo shows, which I hope to probably do more of, just me just getting shit off my chest. But I was out of town that weekend before, and there were people who were familiar with, the farm and what I do, and they had just all these questions about how I got started, the acting stuff, and I was like, man, you know what? This wouldn't make for a half bad episode. So I just did an episode kind of chronicling like the superhero stories, like the origin story of like where it all started from. And then I've recently gotten questions like, man, what the fuck happened to the farm? You guys just disappeared. And then for me and you and I, there was nothing happened between Pat and I. Pat loves me. I love Pat. All things run their course. Everything has its season. And I'm a never say never type cat. I'm not putting words in Pat's mouth, but who knows what the future of the farm could hold for the farm. Right now, it's an indefinite hiatus, semi-retirement, but almost like those fighters or wrestlers. I got one more run in me. You never know. We might have another run in us. But for me, like I said, it's for us, we did it for 6 freaking years. And it was a huge priority. And, if you go back to the archives here on the network, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you find podcasts, we still have all of the Conspiracy Farm episodes there. And literally from episode 1 until the last one we did, those topics are still very relevant today. Most particularly episode 150 with Rosa Quarry, talking about, Agenda 21 to Agenda 2030. But, stuff just started happening in Pat's lives and my life. It just, like, again, everything has its season. It ran its course, and we had a hell of a run. But, I mean, if you don't mind speaking on it, champ, like that's kind of what was my explanation. It became less of a priority as other stuff in our lives started coming up. And something most notably you mentioned as we finished, you're like, Jeff, man, we've been talking about this, for a long time, the fire and brimstone, the ugly shit in the world. And as you and I both testified to after doing it for so long, it's very taxing. And it was becoming very unbalanced. It was all about what was wrong in the world. And that's kind of where we started with Everything Combat, which also ran its course because we were trying to balance it out with some good stuff. Life has its fight. We were talking to people who overcome different stuff to live their best life. And, it was just one of those things where, like I said, it just ran its course, and you had spoke to what are the solutions? We've talked about everything that's fucked up in the world, and we're going to talk about what you're doing as far as your role in being the change you want to see. But that was another big aspect of it. We've diagnosed the problem. Now, what are we going to do about it? What are your thoughts, champ, on the farm, what it meant to you, its semi, quote-unquote, demise? People want to know. Believe me.
Well, I think more than anything, yeah, you and I were very invested in, searching for the truth. That's what it was about. And, for many, many, many years, both of us had recognized that the media obviously is, certainly not being truthful on a lot of subject matter. So, the fact that we were both at that point in our lives where we decided to work together and do that podcast, I think, over and over and over again, we, talked about what was coming, what was happening, and, it would always basically end up coming to fruition, and people would still be in denial, and I think some of the dark subject matter that we had to, deep dive into to cover a lot of these things, it was taxing. It really was taxing. And, I think it got to the point for both of us that, look, if I was making $1 million a year off of it, and so were you, the taxing's okay to a certain extent, right?
Yeah. The juice is worth the squeeze.
Yeah. But, I mean, we proved our point when, the COVID lockdown started, and we hit it hard, 4 or 5 times a week, even with shows sometimes.
Oh, man.
And we cracked into the top 50 for news podcasts and news radio shows in the entire world.
Yeah.
And, And, still we weren't making a ton of money. So, at some point, I think we just both, stepped away. We were very invested in it, and it took a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And a lot of people weren't listening, which is very frustrating. And people still aren't listening. But for the people that are listening, I want to talk about solutions, and that's really what I've kind of invested my time in human health and performance, and all the way from humans to the soil, because we literally, the nutrients that make us up, at least if we're going to be super healthy on both ends, soil and human, the same elements of the universe should exist in both. And so helping people understand this and everything in between where things go wrong from the soil to the human. And as we look around ourselves at the massive health issues and obesity issues in America, and, we've got 70% of Americans are on at least one pharmaceutical drug. We've gone past national security crisis, a couple decades ago.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and other people, ask me questions like, when you can obviously speak to this, what role, if any, did, and I'm going to preface this by saying Patrick did absolutely nothing wrong by taking a trip to Washington, D.C., but he exercised his First Amendment right to free speech and freedom of assembly, which apparently is pretty dangerous in this country now. If that has any role in tapping out on the farm, speak to that. But what was that like? Because that ripple effect was, you're Pat Miletich. You have people taking pictures with you all the time, and apparently whatever the guy with the OK, which apparently now means whatever the fuck. I had no idea about that. But because that was a rough time in your life, and obviously there was ramifications as far as your job. Talk to a little bit about what happened when the ramifications of going to D.C. on January 6th.
Well, you and I had talked quite a bit, and things were, certainly you had recognized even before me that, hey, a lot of red flags going up with Don in office and the things that he was doing and things like that. I wanted to believe for a while there that there was hope. But by the time, certainly by the time I went to Washington, D.C., I wasn't there for certainly to support Donald Trump. I was there because I was concerned with vote legitimacy, and elections and concerns. And there was a million other Americans there that day that had the same concerns. Now, ultimately, me just being there and taking pictures with a bunch of people and stuff, and a gentleman who, both of us considered actually a friend, wrote a bunch of lies about me and put it on the internet, and everybody, just assumes what they read, and, doesn't take into account that I spent an entire adult life, training people of all different walks of life, and putting 95 kids into televised careers, no matter what their background. I didn't give a shit what color they were, what religion they were, any of that shit. And but none of that matters when lies are written about you. And what bothered me the most, to be honest with you, Jeff, is I expected folks who are on the political left to go after me, but it was the lack of support from the folks who are supposed constitutionalists that bothered me the most. And that was something that made me realize that look, ultimately I'm here to take care of my kids. I'm not talking politics anymore. I long before Donald Trump came around, I had lost faith in both sides of the aisle. It's obvious that they've all been compromised. And sorry, there's a train going by my house. And the only reason I voted for Trump was because he was never in politics. I thought, well, maybe there's hope.
Right.
But so ultimately, I lost faith in a lot of people. To be honest with you, a lot of people that I thought were friends never called me again. And when that sort of thing happens, look, the wheat from the chaff thing, I guess, happened naturally, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the way I look at that. And people that have known me for many, many, many years, if there had ever been anything racist that I had ever said, or bigoted that I had ever said or written, that certainly would have come forward. It never did, of course, because I haven't said anything like that.
And God forbid people recognize that you were hosting a podcast for 6 years with a black dude. So, that was apparently irrelevant as well.
Well, look, the world is full of lies, and I see it as, if we were to look at it in biblical terms, Satan's the great deceiver, the master of lies. And either way, there's just a lot of non-truth going around. And so, I continue my search for the truth in terms of educating people on their health, what truly gets them healthy, and, what else we can do with, the massive issues that we have in agriculture and a lot of other industry that's literally ruining people's health en masse.
Yeah.
And we see it, in physical destruction. We see it in hormonal destruction. We see it in mental health issues. We see it, in a lot of different ways. And unfortunately, people, like in school boards, the education folks are embracing this. Kids with mental health issues to the point where they dress up like dogs and cats and want to shit in litter boxes in the bathrooms. That's the words like inclusive and love and everything else is being used to, instead of say, hey, what is the root cause of these sicknesses and illnesses and obesity and everything else? That's really got us in a lot of trouble right now as a nation. Instead of that, they just embrace it and run with it and
well, and again, without seeing,
get into. No, go ahead.
I'm just saying, without seeing the symbiotic relationship that seems to exist between the commercial food industry. I mean, whether it's implicit or explicit, the revolving door of eating shitty food, getting sick, and then being prescribed all this bullshit medicine from the pharmaceutical industry, which is just, has nothing to do with real health. And I obviously want to get into this, man, but kind of going back to like everything you went through, everything we all go through shit in life, man. And it's one of those things where we have to recognize that things happen for us and not to us. And we have to learn the life lessons. Right. If we think we're taking an L, what are the lessons in taking this quote-unquote loss? And it's weird because I've noticed this, man, and I've noticed this in a lot of people's life who choose to take this path. From some of the darkest shit that you possibly think you could be in, sometimes comes the revelation that brings about certain change in your life that helps maybe change other people's life that you never could have imagined in your darkest of moments. And, I've coined this phrase, and maybe it's already out there, but from the hottest fire comes the stronger steel that is forged by it. And again, man, that's what life is about, man. It's not about it all being all good for us. And this notion of being a professional victim, saying, oh, look what's happening to me. It's happening for you if you choose to find the lesson in this life situation that you might have been in, that's not just you, but anybody's been in that hasn't gone their way. And that's what's so beautiful, man. I've been following what you've been doing, seeing some of the interviews I've been doing, and please talk to us about what you're doing now to be the change in the world as it relates to something as huge as the food industry and how it relates to our soil. And we talked about many times on the pod, on the farm, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And you are going to, no pun intended, the root of that. And that is our soil. Talk to us about what you've been up to, champ.
Yeah, sure. No, I at about January, I believe, December, January, or even before that, had a long conversation with some guys that possess the most nutrient-rich, 100% organic, plant-based fulvic humic acid on the planet. And what that is basically every nutrient that we're supposed to be getting from our food that we no longer get because the soil is so depleted of organic nutrients from, number one, corporate farming and mass production of food, but also, dumping billions of gallons of petroleum-based fertilizers and glyphosates and atrazine and everything else all over the soil and the crops and everything. So what I did was I thought to myself, this is a really, really tall order. This is a tall order for a guy that's not from the agriculture industry to take this on and go out and be the Pied Piper of it, right? And one thing that I related directly to, it's a direct parallel to mixed martial arts when I was doing televised debates with politicians back in the day. And I wasn't just going in and going, this is our right. This is America. This is our right to fight and, this and that. No, I did my homework, and I did debates with politicians. And by the end of those televised debates, the politicians were agreeing with me because I boiled it down to the fact that if you were really concerned with athletes' safety and lives, Little League Baseball wouldn't be legal in your state because 7 kids die a year from line drives. auto racing spectators die every year. 40 boxers die a year worldwide. So if you were concerned with the health and well-being of athletes, no sport would be legal. This comes down to the state is not getting its money, and that's all this comes down to is just greed and financial. And they would agree with me. They go, I have to agree with Mr. Miletich. Yes, it is about the money, and cough it up, basically. So, but I believed in the sport. I believed that it was going to succeed because it is an amazing sport. It is true martial arts. It is the proving ground for human knowledge and combat to come together and excuse me, to be able to prove yourself that you're the best in the world, or that you have accumulated enough knowledge to become a world champion and train world champions. So one thing that I did recognize is that, over the last 30 plus years, is that I have been searching for the best stuff on the planet to fuel the human body when it comes to endurance and strength and recovery and, all of those things under very stressful, combative situations at very high level, the highest levels in the world. And through that research and understanding a long time ago, when I'm putting together the pieces of the puzzle, basically how this all came together is that, many, many years ago, when fighters started coming from all over the world to train with me, I would send them to the grocery store to get their groceries. I told them where the grocery store was. This is where the food is. That's how you take care of yourself here. My job is to train you. I'm not babying you. Go take care of yourself. So they would come back every time, whether they were from Brazil, whether they were from Asia, whether they were from Europe. They would come to practice after going grocery shopping in our grocery stores. And this is over 20 years ago, all the way leading up until I retired from coaching. All of these foreign fighters would come to the gym and go, your grocery stores are disgusting. Now we understand why Americans are fat and diseased. And that's it. And so conversations like that made me recognize that something's going on in America that's not going on everywhere else in the world. So the entire center of our grocery stores, you got poultry and meat and eggs and produce on, the different ends. And then everything in between is all processed foods and straight garbage. And it's poison. And that's what they called it. It's poison. Wow. So that made me start wondering, way back when, wow, what is really going on here? And then, even before that, I was recognizing the young boys that were being brought in for karate classes that I was teaching who had severe autism, and wondering what was causing these problems, right? And then finding out that these kids were being raised on these, SSRI drugs back in the day. And this is, going back 30 years even. So for 3 decades, over, tens of millions of mostly boys have been raised on these drugs. And I recognized that long ago, I said, these kids are going to be raised on these drugs, being numbed down by them, or whatever effect we have. And I'm just looking at them, and they're almost like little zombies walking around. And when they hit 18 and no longer on mom and dad's insurance, what is going to happen? This is a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. And of course,
their brains already been rewired over those 18 years.
Yeah, and these are basically meth derivative drugs is what they're being given. They're our children are just being bombarded with harsh synthetic chemicals from the ag industry, in our water, in our food, even in the air, now even in the rain. It's so bad because the glyphosate and atrazines will evaporate up with moisture and then rain down on us and everything like that.
Jesus.
And then mom and dad wonder why little Johnny or Sally have behavioral issues, and then take them to a so-called expert and have them write a prescription for meth derivative SSRI drugs.
Jesus,
the kid's done. The kid has no chance. And this is the crime that's going on. And we need to educate Americans that it's got to stop, that we need to literally go organic, because we are organic organisms. Synthetic chemicals do not belong in our bodies, and we need to be able to find organic substances that do what they're supposed to do. And
can I ask you something about that? About organics?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it seems like, and you help me out if I'm wrong here, to be certified organic means apparently it can still have a certain percentage of bad stuff in it. And I've been hearing about politicians are now lobbying or trying to get from whatever it is, 10% to even 20%, so they could still have bad shit in it and have it still be certified organic. How for lack of a better term, legit is the term organic, and is the only way to really be sure your stuff is organic is to grow it yourself.
Yeah, you need to grow your own food, number one, and yes, there. So for instance, organic fertilizer that might have a stamp on it as organic. There's a lot of inorganic substances in it, and then it could have some microorganisms added to it, and then it gets a stamp that it's organic. Same thing with natural flavors. You can have 10% natural flavors, 90% not synthetic, and it can be called natural flavoring.
Right.
So
right.
That sort of stuff, and organic in the produce section, depending on the PLU numbers, which are 4 and 5 digit numbers with a hashtag, it'll tell you whether herbicides or pesticides were used on it, whether petroleum-based fertilizers were used, all that sort of stuff. So it's all, it's a game.
Wow.
So people have to do their homework, and organic, that's the thing. Organic compounds, organic metals, things like that are totally different than heavy metals and inorganic sources of compounds. Organic means it's been chelated up out of the ground by plants and converted and bonded with carbon molecules, and then it is very stable, and then can be very beneficial to the soil, to plants, to any organism that eats it, and that's kind of basically what it comes down to. You can look up, I don't know how many studies, but there's been an awful lot of studies on organic arsenic being very effective against cancer. But they, in the articles, will say different forms of or certain types of arsenic. They won't say organic. They will just say types of. And to kind of give you an idea of how the education system is kind of working this is, I went to see a golf course superintendent who is the head greenskeeper, so to speak, right? And he's got a degree from a big university, ag department, horticulture department. And I sent him the lab report on the product one of the products that I represent, that is absolutely 100% organic, zero chemicals, totally plant-based. And I went up to see him a couple days after he got the report. And I said, "So what'd you think of the report?" And he said, "Well, I got some concerns with, the levels of aluminum and lead and arsenic and stuff." And I said, "I told you it was 100% organic, right?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "But I still have some concerns." And I said, "Wait a minute, you have a degree from Iowa State University, right?" And he goes, "Well, yeah." And I go, "Well, do they teach the difference between organic and inorganic? I'm what's going on here?" And he was a little offended, to say the least. And I said, "Well, I'm gonna leave a little bit here for you to test on your golf course, and I'll come back, whenever, and just check in on you." So I came back a month later, and he was in his office, and I said, "Hey, how's it going?" He said, he goes, "I've been doing some research," and he goes, "Wow," he goes, "we've really been educated only one way of doing things," and it's the same with agronomists. When I talk to farmers who are friends of mine and talk to them about being able to save them massive amounts of money and using a lot less NPK fertilizers and a lot of this, because these products maximize nutrient uptake. It breaks down the nutrients, makes them bioavailable to the plants, creates deeper root systems, more nutritious vegetables, speeds up photosynthesis, all these different things on top of a lot of other stuff, chelating toxins and heavy metals and things like that out of plants and soil, by the way, that the farmers will look at me and go, "I got to be honest with you, Pat, unless my agronomist tells me to use this, I'm not touching it." And that's kind of, and then most agronomists, a lot of agronomists anyway, that I've talked to, have not been taught anything about organics. Now, I have had some really, really amazing meetings with some agronomists who have educated themselves on organics. I've got an agronomist who is a friend of mine who's going to do some pretty amazing tests. They're a big enough co-op that they've got their own drones, big drones that go out with infrared and thermal imaging cameras, and they will take pictures of the crops, film the crops from above, and then so what he's going to do is he's going to do that. Then he's going to send out the drone with our products, spray about 10-acre rows of the crops of the corn and soybeans, and then About 10 days later, send the imaging drones back out to take pictures of the crops from above, and it can pick up which plants are healthier, which ones are really benefiting from the nutrients. And so I already know what's going to happen with those. So it's going to be really, really cool stuff. And all the tests that I've seen, that I've conducted, and that others have conducted with these organic nutrients, the comparison between those that don't have the treatment with it and those that do, the size of the plants is totally different. The yield is totally different, and the health of the plants is totally different. And just horsing around with my sister's garden.
I was just going to ask you, because I saw that. I was like, whoa, dude.
I sprayed her plants when they were about between 6 and 12 inches tall. And about 7 weeks later, it was literally Jurassic Garden. It had exploded. It exploded, and all the neighbors are just going, "What in God's name are you using on that?" Right?
Wow. And
so that's the power of organics is very real. And if we want to get these organic nutrients into our bodies, which can, I have to be careful even to be able to say that, that I have to say it possibly could add oxygen levels at a cellular level when you put these vegetables, because of the nutrients in the vegetables. It could chelate heavy metals and toxins out of your cells. It could reduce inflammation within the body. It could do a lot of things, but I can't even say that even if it's happened with others, right, or myself. So it's important that people understand, and that if you want a chance to really to give yourself the best chance at health, you've got to be able to find true organics and put them in your body. And there are numerous organics out there. You just have to make sure that they're high quality.
And, almost going back to your conversation with politicians who were so resistant because, they wanted dough, but how much trouble or resistance are you getting from farmers or / the ag industry that have been doing it for so long? I mean, you obviously got Monsanto and, their stranglehold on so much of the agricultural industry. How much resistance are you getting from the ag industry on all this?
Well, look, you got to remember that, a farmer says, well, my grandpa did it this way, my dad did it this way, this is the way I'm going to do it, right? The only thing that's
those old family farms did it the right way, though, didn't they? I'm sorry, didn't the old family farms before the...
Well, there were a lot of family farms that, I remember both sides of my family down in southern Iowa, grandma and grandpas on both sides, and uncles and things like that. You'd see, clear signs of Parkinson's and all kinds of health issues because of the chemicals they were using on their farms, right? So in the 1960s, there was a huge, what they called the green movement, when petroleum-based fertilizers and a lot of other these chemical products were being used a lot more, and yields were going up. They were trying to feed the masses and create enough grain for cows and pigs and everything else. So it worked. The only problem is that when you use synthetics, the plant will recognize it as nitrogen, and the plant will grow, but there's not nearly the amount of nutrients in the corn or the beans or whatever as would be in it with true organics, right? So when they test for micronutrients and things like that, so that's kind of the problem that you run into, is just the overall, just look at the bombardment of every day on. That's why I don't watch TV. So many commercials about pharmaceutical products, and then the at the end of every commercial, it's a list of a myriad of side effects that are many extremely severe, that tell you, it's clearly telling you that your body's been injured, trauma is happening, and the result is inflammation manifesting in different ways within your body. So,
but you'll quit smoking, Pat, or whatever the drug is, whatever it's supposed to stop. You'll have all this spontaneous bowel movements and bleeding out of your anus or whatever the hell it is, but you'll stop, you'll whatever it is.
Well, I've got a friend on Facebook that about 8 times now over the past couple of years has posted pictures of his sink and his toilet with massive amounts of blood just all over the place. And he's got rupturing veins in his throat, in his sinus cavities, and all over the place they're just rupturing, and he's bleeding profusely, and he keeps going back to the same people who end up either operating on him or giving him more medications or whatever it is, and he ends up right back in the hospital again with more pictures on Facebook. And I finally just said, dude, stop going to the people that aren't giving you, they're not going to give you answers. You're not going to get better. You keep going back. This is a revolving door situation, and you're not solving your problem. And every time he goes, yeah, okay, I'll listen to you. He listens to you, and then nothing. Birds. And so it's tough to get through to people sometimes when they don't want to hear you.
Well, hard head makes a soft ass for a lot of people. And it's so weird because it seems like grocery stores are offering so many more healthy, quote unquote, healthy alternatives as far as organics. And it seems like just overall the last maybe 10 years, like foods like Fat, Dead, Nearly Sick or Food Inc. or just we have so much understanding now of how they're fucking poisoning us. But, I was just telling my girl the other day, it's like it's amazing to me. Whatever, no knock on McDonald's, live your best life, whatever. But it's amazing to me to see the fucking line in the drive-thru at McDonald's still. Like, who's eating McDonald's still? But they are. And it's just like, it's one, I'm serious. It's just one of those like people, I don't know, man. There's a certain level of, there's a lot of intellectual laziness and there's a lot of like health laziness too. Not that I'm Mr. Goodbye or anything, but it's like people would rather just satiate themselves and feed their kids for maybe $10 as opposed to like going home and actually cooking them a nutrient dense, vitamin dense meal that, and like you said, like they're eating shitty and then they're scratching their head, wondering why their kids on certain SSRIs or whatever it is, not making that connection at all.
Right. Well, and so I'm working with a gentleman that's kind of taken me under his wing, kind of my business mentor and somebody that's been within it's kind of funny because when we met, he's a very far left-leaning guy. He's in his early 70s. He's a vegan hippie from the 60s, but he also built and sold the largest silicone software company in Silicon Valley history, right?
Wow.
So he's got a really deep understanding. He was fighting this war in the 60s and 70s, dude, that we needed to go to organic. He saw the synthetic chemicals and the writing on the wall and stuff like that. And for him, I think that maybe we certainly want to win, or at least help people understand that we're fighting the same fight. Doesn't matter. Neither one of us are on either side of the political aisle anymore. We've obviously thrown politics out the window. All I want for is, sensibility to take over for our children to have a chance at a great life, at a healthy life. And that's really what it comes down to for us. And, he's a guy that's helped me a lot. But that's the thing is he talks about health is the kitchen. It is not going out to eat all the time. It is not eating fast food. It is buying fresh produce, buying fresh, meats and things like that. And he's a vegan, but he doesn't have a problem with people eating meat. And he says, people need to make their own food. This is where health is taken back by Americans.
Well, and your farmers markets and places, obviously support local, your community gardens, et cetera. But it's like people can have certain things on the shelves, but we also, like you said, have to do our homework as far as like, all right, this says organic beets or whatever it is. Like, where did this come from? Because that's really, like you said, the soil of where these things are cultivated from. That's really the telltale of whether this is really healthy or not. Where was this grown? How was this grown? Did you use those petroleum-based?
Think about this. Right. No, and that's it. And, here's something, NPR radio just last week, literally there was a show, they were talking that for human health, we needed more synthetics in the soil and in our food to deal with the human health issues. They literally said that.
Jesus Lord.
And that is the most insane. Literally all I have to do is, walk up to somebody and say, can we agree that we are organic organisms?
Yeah.
Okay, we got that far. We understand that. So at what point do you think synthetic chemicals belong in the human body? Because in reality, for thousands of years, medicine was plants, it was roots, it was mushrooms, it was the understanding of blending these together. to mitigate disease and inflammation and the issues that the human body was running into. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, thousands of years of knowledge is thrown down the tubes, and these large corporations send scientists out hunting for these plants, far corners of the world, bring these plants back. Their scientists study them, isolate, certain parts, molecules, then synthetically mimic them in a laboratory, and then put that in a pill. And the body in ways is fooled because of the molecular structure of it, but then the side effects kick in, which tell you the body is rejecting it. It's saying, you're injuring me. Don't put this shit in me anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the madness. The circle of madness is that it is the synthetic chemicals that are causing massive, massive problems in Americans' health. And then they're putting more synthetic chemicals into their body in pill form or whatever it is as the answer. And it's not solving the problem. It's just not solving the problem. So,
like you said, it really starts with education.
The amount of money that people are making.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, it's, people on any subject matter, you know how it is, Jeff. Oh, Miletich, you took too many shots to the head. You've got CTE. How's that CTE going? Dude, are you really serious
right
now?
Yeah.
You're going to continue on your 5 medications.
Yeah.
And you can't figure out why you've got high blood pressure and heart issues and respiratory issues and arthritis. And somehow, through the beating that I took my entire career, that I can get out of bed without limping and I can do what I want just because I've been putting high-level organics in my body for years. And I'm not falling apart. I'm actually getting stronger, Why am I going this direction and you're going that direction? But I'm the one suffering from CTE.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, and again, man, you can't save everybody, and not everybody's going to get it, whether it's health or the politics game or whatever. And it's just one of those. I think George Carlin talked about like passive eugenics. No, I'm not a eugenicist. I'm trying to weed out X amount of people, but they're going to weed themselves out by the choices they make, and really that's on them. You can lead a horse to water, not make him drink and stuff, but it's really on them. But it's unfortunate because, I mean, not to get not to touch the third world or anything, but like a lot of these shooters are oftentimes on these serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which say on the bottle, create homicidal, suicidal ideation, etc. And it's just like you almost like McFly, hello, the fucking parents, like, what do you, make the connection. But again,
and look at the number of Americans, not just kids, but parents, but massive amounts of people are being put on these drugs, and now children are being prescribed oxys for mental health issues. This is what they're doing to children.
Yeah.
So you just can't do that. You can't do that to, a generation of youngsters and not expect things to go haywire. You can't expect them to not short circuit and end up having massive problems because it's apparent. And actually, in reality, about 90, they classify anything more than one person as a mass shooting. But, the mass shootings at schools and workplaces, things like that, 95% of them, when we really look at it closely, were raised on these SSRI drugs.
Yeah. Well, and as a testament to the fact that so much of this is working as far as healthier choices, companies who do, raise their food right, et cetera, you have these big corporations. And for example, like Tom's toothpaste, the fluoride-free stuff that I use, it was bought out by Colgate. And so you have some of these smaller companies that come in and swallowed up by these big fucking corporations while they also lobby to expand this criteria for what can be considered or certified organic. I mean, it's really fucked up, man. It's really frustrating just because, like you said, we know the ripple effect of all of this. And if people would just take, like when you talk to our CEO of Chemical Free Body, Tim James, the same thing. It's just if people could just become more educated on their food choices. And some people honestly just don't want to, and that's going to be on them. But obviously it ripples down to us. It trickles down to us as far as healthcare costs and, how we wind up having to pay for people and their poor choices. But I don't know. So the substance in and of itself, like you said, fulvic humic, like where is that? Why is it so nutrient dense, and where does it come from?
Well, basically the humification process is, the breakdown of plant matter. And, people will compost take all their food scraps, their waste, yard clippings, branch, leaves and bushes and whatever else, and compost it. And that breakdown of that plant matter they can put back into their garden, grind it up, things like that, let it decompose. This substance is 1,500 different types of plants from the most nutrient-rich set of peat bogs in North America. And it's decomposed. It's undergone the humidification process for 60,000 years. So the nutrients of 1,500 different types of plants compacted into a sediment layer that starts about 50 feet below the bugs. And it is what I've observed, the most nutrient-rich stuff. It gets the best results. We know that it's zero chemicals. There's zero chemicals used in the process of getting the finished product, where a lot of other humic fulvics come from leonardite, which is coal, which they have to rip the earth open to get to it. Then they've got to use acids to basically remove the fulvic humic from the coal. Then they've got to add microorganisms to it to call it organic. So it's a totally different level. This is, in my mind, through my search, this is the king of fulvic humics. And whether it's the refined versions that have organic vitamin C and other things added to it, because it is almost like a conveyor belt of nutrients and carries other things into your cells with it, or for just injecting a pound of it per acre into your soil on your cropland, and with a fraction of your nitrogen-based fertilizers to maximize that, to save $150, $200 an acre. You times that by 10,000 acres, it's $1.5 to $2 million for a family farm to save at planting time. That's massive. That's huge.
That would be, I would have to say, a big qualifying, convincing point for farmers. The amount, I saw it in another interview where you said that's a huge amount of savings to produce a better quality product. It's almost a no-brainer.
It is, because it's going to improve your soil quality. Like I said, it's a chelator of toxins out of the soil, out of plants. It oxygenates the soil. It darkens the soil, which it'll absorb more sun that way, and it drains better, and actually retains moisture correctly. And there's a lot of things, like I said, that happens to the plant because of this. And it's tough to argue with it when you look at the facts of how much money it saves and the benefits of it. For a farmer, it's really a no-brainer. It just comes down to convincing their agronomist, that this is really the key. Now, the reason people are starting to listen again is because of there's a lot less availability of NPK fertilizers coming up. There's nations that are reducing NPK fertilizers by 30 to 50% or even more. So now farmers are going to have to start listening because, well, they're going to have to use something else to maximize the stuff that they can use, right?
Well, as you hear about all this stuff going on with farmers globally, one of their big, angst is the cost of fertilizer now is going through the roof. So it's almost great timing that something like this hits the streets, because great, you're being priced out of buying that bullshit fertilizer. Well, here's something that's cheaper that's creating a better product for you. Yeah,
NPK fertilizer is 300% increase in price in a lot of places, and it's between fuel costs and the cost of fertilizers and other products. These guys are getting buried.
Yeah.
And, we've got record numbers of farmers, really ended up having to sell. And that's not what we want. We do not want, multinational corporations and government controlling food production. That's how Stalin did it to the Ukraine. You can't give control of food to a few people who might not have the best interest for their people at heart.
Without a doubt. Well, and another thing, people, as people are kind of, quote unquote, becoming more educated and enriching their soil, they're utilizing oftentimes manure. Talk to me, and because I heard you mention before, and that's such a great point, why manure might not be the best move because of what the cows had been eating.
Well, yeah, if they're eating petroleum-based nitrogen-packed grain on one side and then shitting it out the other, that's ending up back in the soil, right? So obviously manure is going to be beneficial, but there's going to be digested plant matter and other things in that. But there are those questions, and then there's a lot of people that go to their compost facilities and their county compost facilities. Now think about this one for a minute. They will take from the wastewater management folks human waste, and that will become part of their compost program. And what did that you and I both know that 70% of Americans are on at least one pharmaceutical product. Well, what happens to that pharmaceutical product, those synthetic chemicals, when they urinate and take a dump? It ends up, in the wastewater treatment facility. And then that gets treated and then gets taken and gets mixed up with compost, yard waste, and everything else that has, lawn clippings with glyphosate and petroleum-based fertilizers in it and everything else. And then you're putting that in your garden, and you think you're being super aware and you're growing really healthy vegetables, when in reality,
Wow.
I was just talking to somebody the other day. They ate some vegetables out of their garden, and they had a massive autoimmune flare-up. And I said, well, what are you putting in your garden? They said, well, from the compost facility. I said, well, this is what's in there, and that's probably what's causing it. And they went, holy cow. So, everybody's got to do a little bit more of a deep dive on their research and realize what's getting put in the compost.
Well, and again, it almost goes back to one of those. Some people are probably just waving the white flag, like, all right, what's the point? I'm being poisoned from freaking birth till death or whatever, and just wondering, like, you can't get out of life alive, of course, but it's like we're making it sound like everything is poison, which a lot in the commercial food industry, everything is. So it's like make the educated choice, build a community garden, build your own garden, but also know where you're getting your seed from, know where you're getting your soil from. And again, if this isn't something that's a concern to you, and you just want to fucking go free base Whoppers for you and your kids, I guess that's the freedom of America provides you that option. But I mean, it's a beautiful thing that, again, champ, you are providing solutions, because this is, I mean, it's health is wealth, as we said so many times, and it's such a huge thing, because our understanding how deep it goes, how bad our food is, even if it's certified organic or whatever, the soil that it's in, like Iowa, we're Iowa boys. How bad is that soil from harvesting corn, mono harvesting or monoculture or whatever? That soil
it used to be.
Go ahead.
Well, the soil around here used to be jet. We're old enough to remember the soil around here used to be jet black, and now the cornfields, the soil is basically clay. I mean, it's literally dead and toxic almost. So it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad how I've observed the soil going from super healthy jet black to tan, and we know that there's some serious problems there. So definitely need to address it and keep addressing it, and just people are starting to wake up. I mean, they're tired of being sick, they're tired of being diseased, and through this process that I've been on, this road that I've been on, and getting doors slammed in my face, I've had some doors opened wide for me. I'm the keynote speaker. How it's incredible how this all happened, but I'm the keynote speaker at the Ag Emerge Summer Summit that's coming up here. It's at Bally's Casino, at the old Jumers Casino, and then also at a 3,500 acre farm in Illinois, owned by Monty Bottens and his wife Robin, and they have Grateful Graze, which is a grass-fed beef company, amazing eggs, truly free-range chickens. Their hogs are in the woods eating plants in the woods. There's so much knowledge there with just one person and his wife. It's really incredible just to be around him. And I was informed that this was the guy. This was the guy that I needed to talk to, and a common friend gave my number to Monty, and Monty had called me and said, so-and-so said that I should probably reach out to you, that you have something that might interest me. And I started talking about the product, and he of course uses a fulvic humic because he's so far ahead of the game. But when I started talking a little more in depth about it, I think he became interested, that there might be something there. And so really what ended up happening is he said, yeah, he goes, it's planting season, I'm going to be super busy. He goes, but come out on a rainy day or give me a call on a rainy day. So I had called him several times on rainy days, and he didn't answer, and he didn't call me back. And, he's one of the most knowledgeable guys in the country when it comes to both organic and conventional farming. Like California Ag Solutions is a massive company. this guy is a heavy hitter, and he's an extremely knowledgeable, smart guy. And so I'm beating my head against the wall, going, man, this guy won't call me back. What the hell's going on? And don't come out, sunny day, I'll be busy, whatever. Well, I'm at the coffee shop, and I'm sitting there talking to myself, going, man, somebody's got to listen to me. And what I've got in my possession, this stuff is different. I know this stuff is different. I mean, I've observed how different it is compared to 30 plus years of experience in human performance and people, in their health and everything else. I said, shit. So sunny day, I got my cup of coffee, and I go, fuck it, I'm going out there. So I jumped in my truck, threw a bag of the product in the truck, and I drove out there. And he, of course, was out in the field, but I got a chance to speak to his wife, and we talked for quite a while. Really kind lady, and she said, well, I'll talk to Monty, and I explained, got some of the truly refined product in her hands for use for humans, and she had amazing results in just 4 days, and that, I think, piqued his interest a little bit more. So when I went out and talked to him, I'm just trying to talk from the human side of things, not from the soil side, because I'm not an agriculture guy. I'm a human guy, human performance, human health. Through, my laboratory was one of the harshest environments on the planet, in wrestling rooms, inside of cages, this sort of stuff, the very, very intense environment of combat sports. And so while I'm talking to him, I'm getting up to the point where I want to say, how can I work with you? But I'm afraid to get to there, right? And because I'm talking to the guy he is the guy. And he finally looks at me and he goes, do you know how bad I need you? And it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. I just went, and I need you. And so through this, I said, I can just envision that, I can speak to it from the human side of things and work through the food side of things all the way to the soil. And then you can come at it from the soil side back toward the human side. And everybody that's listening, from the agriculture world to the health industry people, or just humans in general, can all stand there and put the pieces of the puzzle together and go, holy shit, that's it.
It is. It's such a
right?
No-brainer, man.
And so
it sells itself. Sorry.
Well, and that's the thing is I didn't even know. He goes, hey, got your, do you want to speak? And I'll speak at your event. You want to speak at my event in August? Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, I had no idea. He decided to put me as the keynote speaker for Thursday night dinner at Bally's. And so I'm going from and of course I'm speaking from the human side, the health and performance side, which I know quite a bit about. But to be in a keynote speaker position in, an agriculture gathering is really an honor. I mean, it's really a huge honor. And I think that I'm excited about it. I'm of course nervous about it, but this is a fight worth fighting. And, I really want to help people get back their health and help people heal their land. And,
I mean, it's a culmination,
change the trajectory that the planet is on.
And it's a testament to your passion for human performance and just your passion for humanity, brother. I mean, it sounds corny, but you are being the change you want to see in the world. You're thinking globally. You're very on top of your shit, but you're acting locally. And what's so cool about it, bro? Like I said in the beginning, man. None of life throws us curveballs, and dude, you have taken the lemons life has thrown you and given you, and made some damn sweet lemonade. And I told you even offline, I'm so excited for this for you, bro, because this is all you, dude. This is so you, and I can only imagine the sky's the absolute limit with what you're doing, man. So I'm just really stoked for you. Where can people find out more about this? Because I know you got a whole company, website, etc.
Well, I appreciate it. They can go to Soil Savior, SOIL SAVIOR, soilsavior.com, and they can order a 1.5 pound bag of this stuff for their lawn and garden, or they can order 55 pound bags all the way up to one ton bags of this product. And like I say, 1 ton of it takes care of 2,000 acres, and at a pretty reasonable price. Let's put it that way. It's compared to conventional fertilizers. This is categorized as a nutritional or a soil conditioner, not a fertilizer. And we've also got products for livestock, for cows, pigs, chickens, even for horses. imagine the potential of a lot more oxygen in a racehorse's muscles in the cellular level. I'm looking for a triple crown winner, buddy.
Seriously. I mean, the possibilities of this stuff are just absolutely endless. And I mean, I'm really excited for you, man. And, from being guest number one to the adventures that was spawned from that in the farm, broadcasting with you, just everything we've done, brother. I can't even begin to tell you how much I love you. And I'm just proud of you. I'm happy for you. And I will attach the link to that company in the description of this episode. Any other final words, champ?
Oh, dude, it's just good to spend an hour talking to you, bro.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
I love you.
Yeah, I love you too. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Pat Miletich. Check it out, soilsavior.com. Peace and so much love. So very much love. Respect. Till next time.